Hello guys, this is What About Nintendo, and today I'm here to talk about how Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey will look in the Labo VR modes for those games, and how a Switch Pro could improve this. So, gonna be crunching a lot of numbers here, let's get right on into it. So guys, Nintendo recently announced that Breath of the Wild, the entirety of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, would be playable in VR with Labo VR, and that there were going to be special missions made for Super Mario Odyssey that will be able to be played in VR. And this is super exciting. In fact, I was going to make a video on it on Friday, but I just wasn't able to because I wanted to make a video right then and there. But unfortunately, I had to wait until today, but I'm super pumped to talk about this because I'm super excited about it. And my first thought was, well, I'm wondering how this will look and how it will run and all that kind of stuff, because the Switch's screen is a 720p screen. You're having that on the horizontal axis because this is VR, and so resolutions can get down pretty low, especially when you have it this close to your face. So I was just wondering, what exactly are the numbers that we're seeing here, and I'm here to give those to you today, along with how a potential Switch Pro could improve them. First off, let's start with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild runs at a variable 1280 by 720p undocked, going down to 1152 by 648p when things get a little hectic. As I said, VR splits that horizontal resolution in two, which means at best you're getting a 640 by 720p image. Well, technically two 640p by 720 images to put together, but essentially what it looks like to you is a 640 by 720p image. And at worst, when cut in half, you're getting a 576 by 648p image. Calculating the amount of pixels this is against widescreen resolution so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on here. At best, you're getting a total 460,000 pixels, which is closest to about 513p, which has 467,000 pixels. And believe me, those 7,000 pixels are indiscernible. So maybe you could say it's kind of like a 540p image if you want to liken it to a more common widescreen resolution. At worst here, however, we're talking only 373,000 pixels. To put that into perspective, a widescreen 480p is around 409,000 pixels. So we're actually talking about 40,000 less pixels here. This is actually closest to 459p at 374,000 pixels, so maybe if you want to liken this to a common widescreen resolution, you could say it comes fairly close to a 480p image. So overall, we're not looking at anything that's too low, nothing that's too terrible. Is it going to look amazing? No, not really. But is it going to look terrible? No, it should look fine enough, nothing crazy. But how would that look if this was a Switch Pro? Specifically, let's assume that a Switch Pro has a 1080p screen. And since Breath of the Wild runs at 720p on the current Switch fairly often, let's assume that this Switch Pro was able to hit 1080p on that undocked screen. Half of the horizontal axis on a full 1920 by 1080p is 960 by 1080. That's 1,036,000 pixels, which is a bit higher than a full 1280p by 720p at just 921,000 pixels, and is definitely much bigger than the 460,000 pixels we're getting on the normal version. But let's also assume, like the normal Switch, the resolution gets hit by 90% on both axes when stressed. It means the game would go down to 1728 by 972p, or in VR to 864 by 972p images, and that is 839,000 pixels per eye, which is under the 720p's 921,000 pixels, but not by that much. It's closest to 684p at 831 pixels, but in reality, it would look pretty close to a full 720p image. So as far as resolution goes, if we do get a 1080p screen on the Switch, it would look pretty good on that system. Is it going to look as good as the HTC Vive? No, it won't. But I think it will look good in its own right, and of course, it's not nearly going to be expensive as an HTC Pro or anything like that. But it's not really the resolution that worries me, it's more of the frame rate. A problem I foresee on the original Switch is that Breath of the Wild only runs at 30 frames per second, and can be unstable at times on top of that. Typically for a VR game, 60 FPS is the minimum to avoid motion sickness, and 90 frames per second is recommended. So a game with 30 frames per second that can at times drop to the mid-20s doesn't seem like a great candidate for VR. I'm hoping that a Switch Pro might be able to get Zelda up to 60 frames per second, but as far as I'm aware, games like Zelda are very CPU bound, and if they go with an X2, I'm not sure if the CPU will be able to handle that or not. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how everything turns out. Also keep in mind that this is a third-person perspective game, not a first-person perspective like most VR games, so that definitely lessens the motion sickness by a lot. And Zelda isn't a game where you're typically flinging the camera around in multiple directions very quickly, so that helps out too. Next up though, we got Mario Odyssey. And Mario Odyssey has kind of the opposite problem of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Since the game runs at a very smooth 60 FPS, motion sickness won't be as much of an issue. However, resolution might be. Mario Odyssey is a strange case. The game targets 1280 by 720p in handheld mode, however it doesn't actually hit that. Not really anyways. According to Digital Foundry, the game attempts to utter two 640 by 720p frames, one after another, together to hit the target 720p. And it does give that illusion when the camera is still, since every frame is lining up perfectly, it appears that the game is at a full 720p. However, when the camera is moving and the frames aren't lining up as perfectly, this illusion is mostly lost, and it comes out looking more like somewhere between 640 by 720 and a full 720p. So in VR, on paper at least, that means it would be using two 320 by 720p frames to try and make up two 640 by 720p images. That means the game is only rendering 230,000 pixels per eye, which, by the way, is about the exact same number of pixels as a 360p image. However, as I said, the technique does do a decent job of getting it to look like a higher res than it actually is, so it won't look quite that bad, but I imagine it will still look considerably blurrier than Zelda. But now let's talk about how a Switch Pro could improve this. I've said this before in my other videos, but I'll say it again here. A Tegra X2 would likely have in its handheld mode about the same power, but a little bit less than the current Switch does in its docked mode. Therefore, while I do think it would be a considerable resolution bump from the current Switch, I don't think we're going to be able to get a lot 1080p on the undocked mode, as the docked mode in the current Switch doesn't even do that. Instead, what I'm going to referring to here are the case where it is a dynamic 900p like the current Switch. 900p is 1600 by 900, or in VR that would be 800 by 900, which is 720,000 pixels per eye. This is pretty close to 648p with 746,000 pixels, and definitely beats the 230,000 pixels that we're getting on the current Switch by a lot. However, this is the best case scenario. Mario Odyssey runs at 810p a lot of the time on the current dock Switch. So, 810p or 1440 by 810 in VR is 720 by 810, which is 583,000 pixels, which is close to 576p at 589,000 pixels, and definitely again beats out that 230,000 pixels of the current Switch. However, there's also a worst case scenario to think of, and that is the fact that the game can drop to 720p in very rare cases, so that is the same as Breath of the Wild's best case scenario on the base Switch, or 460,000 pixels. Again, that's still 2 times as many pixels as what's on the current Switch, so a huge upgrade here. Overall, I'd be very happy with this, as while the resolution is lower than potential for Zelda on a Switch Pro, it is running at a full, silky smooth 60 FPS, which is so much more conducive to VR than Breath of the Wild's at times unstable 30 FPS. Sure, it won't be as sharp as Breath of the Wild, but it will sure be a hell of a lot smoother. Last thing before we go, guys, you gotta keep in mind that these are all based off assumptions. We don't know if a Switch Pro is even coming, and if a Switch Pro is coming, we don't know the exact power. It could be more powerful than the X2, it could be less powerful than the X2. We also don't know what exactly how the Switch base will run. These are just approximated numbers based on how it runs currently. We don't know if they'll make any changes to the VR mode. Perhaps they'll make changes to texture resolution, or draw distance, or enemy counts, or something like that. in order to get the resolution higher, at least in Mario. I doubt they'll do that for Zelda because it's going to be the full fat Zelda experience, but you know, they might change a few things here and there with draw distance or something in Breath of the Wild in order to get that resolution to be higher. So in the end, it might end up looking a bit better than what I'm saying, but this is, I think, a good guide to go off of, you know, based on the exact numbers we're seeing on the current undocked mode, and I doubt they'll do anything wildly to change that, but there's always the possibility. But yeah, guys, that's all for this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below of these resolutions. Do you think it's gonna look good? Do you think it's gonna look like absolute trash? Are you excited for Zelda Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey in VR? Also, if you like this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell icon for notifications of all my videos. Also, if you would, please share this video with everyone you know, all social media sites, that kind of stuff. You know how it is, because it really does help out my channel a lot. So thank you guys all for watching. I'll see all you awesome people later on Nintendo. Bye.